The End of the World, by Geoffrey Dennis. Read by Martin Pritchard. How? The origin of the world is unknown. When geological time begins, some short 1,000 million years ago, there's already a globe, in shape if not in surface much as now, whirling around a star little different, if at all, from our sun today. Body with its given size and substance, its allotted place and path in heaven. How it came there is unknown. Knowing nothing, man has variously and valiantly guessed. 7 chief guesses jostle for primacy. The nebular. There was once a great fluid cloud, or rotating chaos of fire, far flung beyond the present orbit of Neptune. Gradually, through prodigious years, it cooled and condensed, at its dwindling fringes throwing off successive rings, which became the several planets, while the main mass shrank to form our central sun, the attractional. The cosmic cloud did not throw matter off, but attracted new matter from outside. These captured masses formed the planets. The nebula itself became the sun, the meteoric. Millions of meteor swarms moved nearer together. By progressive agglomeration and concretion formed themselves into solid Earths, and by gravitational attraction were drawn within the orbit of one of the stars, our sun. The title. There was once a great star, much greater than the sun now. A still greater star passed near, raised on our star a fierce tide, tore out of him a 1,000,000-mile stream of gas. The outer portion of this stream receded, and split up into the fragments, or condensed into the drops, that are the Earth and her sister worlds. Our parent star, most likely a dead star that had been wandering for countless dead years through the infinite, passed not hard by but crashed head-on into another star, and in colossal conflagration flamed into new life, a glorious nova for Sirian. Glasses to behold. The main piece became the sun, small shattered bits the satellites, in his turbulent youth the ancestral star, whether lashed to tidal frenzy by some passing body or urged by radioactive excitement of his own, one day burst open the crust new hardening upon him, and shot forth of his gaseous or fiery self, which particles, or planetesimals, by local convergence formed the planets. The magical. In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. And there are variants and combinations of all these guesses and objections, mathematical or mystical, to all these guesses and other guesses. In a word, nobody knows. We only know that a beginning our system must once have had. And since, for the human mind as constituted, the future is even harder to divine than the past, the mode of the ending of the world is a still wider and wilder field for surmise than the mode of its beginning. Nobody knows. We only know that an end there must one day be. It is hard to realize and harder to relish. But the hour will come when the fields and forests, the lands and oceans, the earth and heaven, the whole seen world with man himself, by whom it is seen, and all that man has made, the roads and the farms, whom casualty daily besets. The toll of hazard is high, every step forward by mechanical science increasing both the likelihood and the variety of murderous mischance, who now can be smashed out of life not only as in the good old days, by boulder or landslide, by railway train or motor car or airship. Heat or fire may be his end, sunstroke or lightning, or to be struck by shot or shell or death ray, or burned alive when the spool flares in dark palaces. Cold may be his portion. He may die of polar courage or of ramentless starvation in city streets. Water may finish him, drowning him in river or lake, wrecking his ship at sea, or desire of water. If he fall of thirst in the desert or fail in his multitudes through drought and following famine, few will survive the 1,000 maladies, and if they do, there are always the ills man has added for himself to nature's store. Organized hunger, which holds nearly half this best of all possible worlds in its cruel grip, and organized slaughter which, people, know you, know beloved me. Some illness of the body may shorten her days. Her death may come through crashing comet or through sudden fire, through heat or through cold, through drought or through many waters. If, however, she elude all chance disasters and decline all modes of premature decay, if she live through till her ultimate possible hour, till the last astronomical inevitabilities that lie in wait, her extremity will be but postponed. She thinks, I shall be a lady forever. But she too is a clock. Time is not for her, and eternity against her. She too is a prey. The final death of this physical world is as sure as the death of the physical body of each one of the creatures upon it. Comet, from all antiquity, from the first yellow thinkers who compiled the great Chinese celestial atlas, and surely from darker and earlier tribes in whose hearts alone the wonder and the fear stood written, people dwelling on this earth have feared or wondered when they looked up at the familiar sky to behold there a serpent, sudden and fiery. What is a comet? The old astrologers had one sort of answer. The new astronomers have another. According to the latter, a comet is a heavenly body of debatable origin, gassy composition, and swift and various movement, distinguished indeed by certain minor eccentricities, but otherwise as much without the realm of wizardry, and within the. It commonly consists of three parts. First, brilliant central point, kernel or nucleus, star-like to the eye but not star-like in mass. Second, surrounding the first and merging into it by misty gradations, a round nebulous haze known as the coma. When a comet comes near the sun, this encircling main heats and dilates, giving birth to the third part, the famous and frightening part, a long luminous appendix known as the streamer or sword or beard. Pliny records 12 shapes, with as many names, or in modern parlance, as the tail. Many comets, however, have no tail, or only sometimes a tail. Others, proudly multicaudal, display 2 tails or several. The 6-branched splendor of 1754 preened like a golden peacock across the sky. So, in brief, the modern stargazers, with their telescopes and spectroscopes and astral photography and spectral analysis to aid them, to seers of other days, were not so interesting for what they were as for what they boded. They were objects of omen or presage, sometimes good, but much more often bad. Fiery destroyers that announced from the heavens fire and destruction on earth, swords of flame that foretokened war, red arrows that were arrows of famine. Artful Augustus was well pleased, for if Julius were a god, then his murderers were not homicides but deicides. A notion most helpful to the policy of artful Augustus, by whose gratitude was built a temple to that comet, under whose reign, as first emperor of mankind, a star in the east proclaimed the young redeemer of mankind, at whose death, perhaps from the selfsame asp that stung Cleopatra, flared up a star in the west, perhaps the selfsame star that was Caesar. In the new Christian era, heavenly signs came thick and fast to declare its many disasters. A Titan sword pointed down towards Jerusalem, and soon by Titus's sword the holy city was laid waste forever. His Holiness the Pope denounced it, issued a bull against it, excommunicated it, then fearfully remembered and piously commanded the revival of an old disused prayer, the Angelus. What time each day at noon the church bells should be rung, that the faithful everywhere might unite in synchronous prayer against both Koran and comet. But though the Angelus kept ringing, the Turks kept advancing, following the westward star that had beckoned them on. Kept advancing, they and the star, till together they took Byzantium, defiled Sophia, trod on her 100 crosses, and gave her, that was Christ's, to Muhammad, between the sign and the disaster, the shape of the one and the nature of the other. There seems to have been no fixed relation. The only sure nexus the Middle Ages established was that between the fiery visitant and the fate of princes, between comets and lungs. Majesty's death was announced in the firmament. Comets of special malignity, however, may be noted as having ushered to their graves Attila the Scourge of God, Valentinian the Pannonian, Louis the Debonair, innumerable prayers that the king prayed, fasts that he fasted, and churches that he built, could postpone the end for only 3 short years. Richard the Lion-hearted, Charles the Bold, and Ferdinand the Catholic. When a monarch chanced to die without the presaging serpent, then one had to be invented. When, on the other hand, despite a monster fit for the emperor himself, Gian Galeazzo Visconti, Earl of Virtue, refused to depart, the scandalized astrologers heaped upon him as he lay in bed such awful descriptions of its awfulness that he died in the end of fright. The astrologers said 'twas of the comet, side by side with these lesser auguries. Throughout all the centuries men held the maximum belief that one day a comet would destroy the whole earth. In lively contrast, a merry and medley minority stand the optimist countries and individuals who thought well of comets. Timoleon of Corinth, undecided whether or no to set out on his Sicilian expedition, took a comet as a sign of heaven's blessing, and at once sailed forth for Syracuse, which despite divers hardships and perils, he finally captured without the loss of a. Such are the viniculturists and vintners of these latter days, with the oenophiles in attendance obedient, who, seeing that one concomitant year after another proves likewise a good wine year, proclaim cause and effect. To the 1811 comet was ascribed the most famous of all famous ports and the premier vintage ever of the premier Grand Cru ever. The legendary cometary Chateau Lafite, while it was Donati's of 1858 that gave that year's grape its goodness. The Bordelais challenged tradition. They hoped for comets. There were the cynics also, in Rome, such as Augustus, such as Seneca, who yet seems to tremble a trifle while he mocks, such as Vespasian, who when told that one boded ill, replied, "Yes, but for the king of the Parthians my enemy. I am bald, but he like the comet has a beard." She added cryptically, after a good look skyward, and strode back into the room with a smile, "And let us hope an oath also, to go on with her business and England's." Such as her right disloyal subject, Henry Howard, Earl of Northampton, who wrote his preservative against the poison of supposed prophecies nearly 400 years ago, and gave a devastating list of comets that had brought no unpleasant results in their train, and another list, still more devastating, of unpleasant events that had occurred without comets to cause them. He was at once incarcerated in the Fleet. It may of course have been the Queen's amorous jealousy. She had caught him exchanging tokens with her sister the Stuart. More likely, it was the enmity of the judicial astrologers. However it may be, his gibes fell, if not on hostile, at least on deaf ears, and he remained an exception. For whether they thought the influence benign or unbenign, almost all men through all the centuries till the last 2 or 3 thought it supernatural. Comets were still thought to produce effects on the earth, and these effects were still thought to be chiefly baleful. The change was that they came to be regarded as natural and not supernatural effects, part of the foreordained order of physical things. Comets tampered with the atmosphere, caused curious dry fogs, or overgreat heat, or divers sicknesses. The plague of London in 1665, as the sleeping sickness epidemic in Japan in our own day, was put down to cometary gases. Thou shalt die in a polluted land. The utter danger that a comet would accomplish the end of the whole Earth was not removed, but by honest collision, not by magic. The 19th century's attitude differed from that of all its predecessors. A comet meant nothing, favorable or unfavorable. It could produce no supernatural results or natural ones either. Human reason and human records alike controverted the cometic claims, and however eager to smile at their forebears of the 19th, 20th century students who toil through the long Chinese records, or through Pingré must admit that most of the visitors therein so monotonously registered did little to the Earth that was worth doing, either good or bad. The 20th century began to waver. If somehow good lived on, it was flickeringly. Magic was in the air again, and catastrophe. Also new facts. It was demonstrated, for instance, that by means of the shooting stars showered down by comets, or the tenuous matter shed from their tails, new supplies of carbon, the stuff of life, were given to us. The answer depends upon many factors. The composition of the comet, its speed, its proximity, the angle at which it struck. Approaching, it might absorb the oxygen of the atmosphere. We should die, gasping and choking, of asphyxia. It might absorb the azote, leaving us proportionately too much oxygen. We should live hours of nervous, delirious joy, the whole world dancing a saraband or international hornpipe, until through overexaltation we attained death cardiac or neurotic. It might contain some gas to poison the air. The name of the star is called wormwood. Our end would be villainous. Its gases might combine and combust with our oxygen, causing conflagration of the air, concremation of our fields, our cities, and ourselves. It might triumph tidally, attracting the seas, pulling them up to cover the earth. The deluge again, we should drown. It might whirl up the earth to be its satellite, rock and reel us away. Falling, these would chafe the air to unbearable heat. Plunging into the sea, would produce tidal waves and worldwide floods. Colliding with the land, would bore huge holes through to Gehenna beneath, new craters of burning, wherefrom in every direction cracks in the earth's rind would radiate, new rows of craters of burning. Fire added to fire and both to ravening water. It might, advancing, cancel the earth's movement. Transformed into heat, would suffice to dissolve the globe. We should vanish in instant steam. The choice is thus various. Are the chances many? Most astronomers answer with a comforting negative. Their contention is this: space is infinite. The length of the Earth's annual circuit is enormous. Comets are not infinite in number. Few of them cut the terrestrial orbit. Therefore, the arithmetical likelihood of a collision, or of even a nearish encounter, is infinitely small. Arago put the chances of crashing with the central kernel of a wanderer in 281 million, or with some less central part, say 10 times greater. 1 in 28,100,000. Imagine a vast urn, he says, in were 28 million white balls, meaning us no harm, and one black ball condemning us to death. Should we take that one chance seriously? When we put in our hand to draw, should we whine and shrink? Even if the one chance fell, and a comet passed very near, its passage would be too quick to matter. It would have no time to scorch, poison, pull up the seas. In a few seconds it would be infinitely far away again, not having had the physical time to harm us. The tails may contain vapors and a little meteoric dust, but are some 45 billion times less dense than air. Oftener they contain no substance at all, being a mere optical electrical effect, as solid as a sunset. And a series of fine sunsets is the worst their swish could do for us. The kernel itself is, at its heaviest, but a diminutive cluster of meteors, Impact wherewith could only mean the gay sunsets, with a glorious shower of shooting stars thrown in. These and other astronomical considerations are reinforced by the moral one, that anything so unpleasant is also unlikely. Solid they must anyhow be. The gases spectroscopically seen in them would have long ago vanished off into space, unless there were a substantial nucleus to hold them gravitationally together. Some heads are as large as 3 moons. Among the gases the spectroscope reveals our most deadly poisons. Their extreme speed would only save us if their passage were distant. In case of crash, so much the worse. These and other astronomical considerations are reinforced by the immoral one, that anything so unpleasant is also likely. The sum of it all is that nobody knows. If destruction by this mode is not expected, it is not to be ruled out. Fire, apart from those of the cometary ends, which are also flaming ends, fire has fair chances of being the element that will conclude us. Fire is the same word as pure, and many lands and ages have believed in its purifying virtue alike for soul and body. The impurer the flesh or spirit, the purer had the flames to be. For the prostitute, fire of the forest. For this foul world, fire from on high. Fire is elemental life. By burning, the individual life was given in sacrifice back to the elemental. This mode has therefore been accounted man's most glorious mode of death. Flames have made even self-murder noble, and martyrdom, already noble, even nobler. The ultimate success of the new religion in Reformation England, with the failure of the old, does not wholly explain, nor does the bias of our schoolbooks nor our biased selves their product wholly explain, why we regard with more shrinking the Marian persecution of the Protestants than the Elizabethan persecution of the Catholics, the balefires of Smithfield than the block of Tyburn, with more admiration the brave sectaries and reformers that perished in the one than the brave seculars, and success and bias together cannot explain the difference in our feelings. Rather does the difference in our feelings explain both the success and the bias, and that difference is due, more than all else, to the greater glory and terror in humanity, and purity of death by fire. The sour sister burnt Protestantism into the English soul. The cynical sister could not axe Catholicism back. For triumph faith needs the torch, the loveliest Greeks, for which they hewed high-foliaged oaks, and piled the wood, which they made 100 feet this way and that, on which they set the corpse, while Achilles his lover slew 12 sons of Trojans. No daughters were there, whose, the bravest Trojans, for which during 9 days they gathered wood, which they built hen high, on which they laid him, on which they then cast fire, which burned his bones white as they wept tears around him. Thus held they funeral for Hector, tamer of horses. Of King Saul was fused everything, of King Pyrrhus all but his big toe. Then, following Greece, the pomp long history of Rome, pyrally alight with consular and imperial blazes, pyrally aloud with the conclamatio and the rustling of wings as the funeral eagles soar into heaven. So ancient Mexico, so the Old North. Many great names had burial not burning. The first Adam, who was inhumed on Calvary. The second, who crucially died there. Counting all peoples, cremation would doubtless be outnumbered by cadaverous burial. Yet the balance of superber custom is the other way, and fire, while it purified and glorified, was seen of many to be the common-sense mode also. Worms do not devour our ashes as they do our inhumated flesh. Foes cannot deface nor defile them. No greedy 6-foot is needed to detain them. As for men, so for the world. Cremation indeed was a complement, an ever-repeated rehearsal, the final pyre of all things. Life itself is a flame, as was long ago, and remains the truest comparison. In the cyanogen type of theory, as to how life first began. Fire is the force that synthesized the albumin, and Haeckel joins hands with Heraclitus. What flame has given flame will take away. The commonest credence through history is world's end by the master element. As he flew, his own plumage caught fire in seared forfeit. As in Greek story, the thief was as a demigod, whether he rifled the sky god in heaven or the forge god in that Lemnian isle, whither Zeus had down-hurled him. He too did Promethean penance by those 300 centuries of torture on the rock. If anthropology alleges, armed whether with fire drill or fire saw, firestone or fireplow, it was impious man himself, the inventor, who first raided the high sanctuary. Then he too with his world shall atone, and perish beneath banners of burning. Side issue, accompaniment or prelude to the real end, the religious end. The last judgment, the end of souls. And do the faith-free prophets of today think it likely or unlikely that this planet will so perish? Unlikely is their answer, clashing sharply with the old beliefs of men. Though, as with the comet chance, they will hazard no stronger word, or smaller but hotter. Some heliographers declare that this is even now happening. At one stage in the sun's life, the balance between the heat he is continually losing, sending forth into space and squandering, and the regenerative heat he gains through contraction must tilt in favor of the latter. That stage, the maximum density stage, the paradox stage, the sun's apogee through shrinking, may be not in the past but in the future, may be upon us tomorrow or today. Who might burst, who might break in two, his interior part rotating so fast that spinning would lead to splitting. Our orbit would then become violently irregular. The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard, and shall be removed like a cottage. Long before we actually collided with either, we should have swung so near to one or other of the two halves of the sundered sun that all life would have been charred away. Who might lure some brother sun too near? In the middle of a line of force, the earth would be stopped still, its onward movement changed into molecular movement, and be reduced to steam. Who might, on his endless journey, move into some new region of space filled with different matter, or denser matter, there soon to develop some new form of radiation, or greater radiation, drift into one of the nebulae flung netwise through the cosmos, there at once to blaze like a meteor when it flies into our atmosphere. Too near one of the hottest, an S Doradus, Gamma in Pegasus, Zeta in Perseus, able with their 50,000 degrees of sidereal fire to ruin from very far, rush up. The old channels to the old outlets show an easier way. Forth of 1,000 reawakened volcanoes, from the lowliest to the highest, from Cosima to Cotopaxi or the Sahama, burning matter, tumults of lava molten and magmatic, will spout and spread, covering the earth already riven and afire from great earthquakes, and struck by purple lightning. In 3 millenaries 17 million people have died plutonically. All the 1,700 million people on the earth today may so perish in 3 minutes. If the crust is cooling faster and contracting faster than the globe as a whole, then the shell will get too small for the egg, and will crack here, break there, split everywhere, as the moon they say once did, which her streamers of obsidian seem to. Tension is increasing, and the coming period of continent-wide cracks and breaks, ups and downs, loud interchanges of land and sea, will blot out, with ourselves, our memories of those gentler seismic centuries from Pompeii to Lisbon, and, or if it is the earth that is getting smaller more quickly than her crust, then the crust is getting too big, and to adapt itself to the dwindling mass it encloses must further fold and crinkle, as though not already pulled and strained and faulted. Enough by the speed with which she turns madly whirls, on her axis, Such adaptations also, such crinklings will take the form of earthquakes more fearful than any in the past, and miserably destroy mankind. Her garments of gladness are cinerable, incremable. Her wood is all touchwood. Her green tunic of verdure is wrought not of salamander's wool, has no woof incombustible nor warp asbestin. Every tree and every town shall be fuel, all people and all palaces for devouring, all life shall be food for the flames. Souls into slag and embers, burning instead of beauty. There are gainsayers, who cap each pyromaniac, might with fireproof won't. The sun won't grow larger, he's too old. He won't grow hotter. Long ago he turned compression corner, and began spending more heat than he earns. He won't burst, having no crust to burst through. He won't divide. Not having the special properties of the fissurable stars, will know no great schism. With that line of force, he cannot terrify us, torify us. Are we not already in a straight line, if straight lines there be, between him and every other star? He may indeed drift into a nebula. That chance, unlike the others, is not fantastic. But it is small, and need not be fatal. We've been wandering through heaven this last few myriad years without such mishap. Yet more hopeless of fulfillment are the non-solar prophecies of calorific end. Firemongers come off even worse than with the sun. Add and combine all their dire possibilities, together they touch not probability. Crueller gods than Vulcan lie in wait. Yet, if burnt, think some, what matter? We shall live again. Earth is phoenix. Then, still splendid, his wings laden with spices, he flew from Hindustan to Heliopolis, entered the temple there. Of sweet woods, frankincense and cassia, fuel you undeciduous, eternal. Built him his own pyre on the altar, fanned with his own wings, the flame, and was burned to ashes. Wherein next day was born a new phoenix, feathered and fledged, who on the third day saluted the priest, and flew away into India, for 500 new years of radiant life. Earth is phoenix, burned to ashes, she would live again, and when the hour came round, through new fire of Easter Eve, Lumen Christi, Paschal candle of destruction, again would die. Water, earth. Not fire, but flood. Less patroned by the generations of old. This mode has in revenge had greater dominion over more modern expectation. Increased heat could drown air it had time to scorch. At the first touch of the sun grown mightier, the mountain snows would melt with terrible speed. Would pour down in myriad converging streams from all high places into all low. From the Alps into the over-civilized European lowlands. Into Italy, Germany, France, from the Himalayas into the over-peopled Ganges plains, torrenting from Everest to Comorin, from the African heights into the black jungles south and west and northward into Egypt, which would see rise up the river, swallowing the Carine Delta and the oldest seats of fear. From the Rockies into the proud Yankee prairies, the 20th century's chief seat of expected power. From the Andes into the Latinate Pampas, perhaps, unless the end comes earlier, to be the chief seat of the 21st. All men that had not perished of the sun's rays would be devoured by the sun-driven waters. Vainly they cling for a few poor days or hours to refuges near them. The swiftest or craftiest climbing to cathedral towers, Milan or Cologne or Chartres, to pagoda or temple tops, to the peaks of the pyramids, to Woolworth's 750th, or such Argentine monster as may yet outbuild it. In white-faced terror of drowning, vainly they climb. The waters increase and prevail, and quench the last cry. The aqueous future proper that, confirming some ancient beliefs, some modern geologists foretell, is the less spectacular one of the slow conquest of the world's land by the world's sea, the gradual covering of the earth by the waters of the great. continents and engulfed the antediluvian animals with antediluvian man. The upward fleeing skeletons from base to peak, seeking vain safety from the waters behind and upon them? What of the mountain of bones, how the flood began and proceeded? How the windows of heaven were opened and all the fountains of the great deep were broken up, how the waters increased, how they prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, 15 cubits upwards did, how in the pagan variant it was Jupiter, and not Jehovah who sent forth the rain-bringing south wind and summoned the sea, till the dolphins played among the forest tops, and the wolves swam among the sheep, and only Parnassus' tip was left, and only. How in the Chaldean stories, Hasizadra or Xyzithros, warned by or Kronos, took into the ark with him not only couples of domestic animals, but also a couple of domestic servants, one male and one female, both butler and bondswoman, so that useful species also might be perpetuated, along with a few intimate friends and buzurkugel. The trained steersman is familiar to Orientalists, who have the tablets that Assur-banipal ordered, and Barosius' exciting narrative, how the Red Indians remembered it, as in the story Snapping Turtle told his paleface questioner, we know from beloved Catlin. How the celestial flood was worldwide like the Pentateuch, and how you proved himself every inch a Noah, stands written in Shu King, in the oldest of literatures. How, finally, in almost all people's traditions the event is there, though the details may differ oddly. And what those details are, is known to comparative folklore students and diluvian specialists alone. The races without any flood record are few. Only the Negroes, the Japanese, and the Egyptians. There is a theory that the last named once had the legend, but deliberately forgot it or changed it. For them the rising of waters was their wealth, their life, their hope. That one flood they knew, yearly Nilotic, was the best thing they knew. Flood as disaster they could not conceive of. Any such legend must be a false legend. Despite this almost universal tradition, no quiet universal deluge may ever have taken place. Local disasters may have been magnified by memory and myth into general ones. The Shu King account is indeed partly founded on fact. For in the 24th century before Jesus, the Huang, Ho Yellow River, sorrow of China, had historically risen and ruined half the land. Half the land, though, not half the world. More solid satisfactions had those who, believing Stoffler not, acquired at job lot prices the seaside and riverside property of those believing. Whatever our beliefs about such beliefs, that man held them, that he believed the flood had happened, is what matters here, and believed it might happen again, and next time spare no Noah. For if Fire End has held pride of place, Flood End has never lacked supporters. Parthians, Persians, some Peruvians. Watery Amos counters Fire Isaiah. The burden of the desert of the sea, it shall rise up wholly like the river. Under the cyclic theory of ever-repeated destruction, ever-recurring rebirth and re-death of the world, water and fire alternate. The conflagratio breaks out in the great summer of the Magnus Annus of disaster. The diluvium mounts in the great winter. For centuries, however, the flood fear halted. During the 19th, it was given new life by certain geologists. It is happening now. A usual estimate of the world area lost by land to sea is some 10 or 11 square miles a year. The loss is not evenly distributed over the globe. For if others lose, some countries actually gain against the sea. Where was half Holland 1,000 years ago? Where is Atlantis now? Nor evenly distributed through the divers parts of any one country. For instance, Italy, where if in many an eroded republican corner the sea is victor, she draws back, defeated near East Imperial Ravenna and West Imperial Rome, victorious Rome. If, as commercial enemies allege, at Southport the sea view is now telescopic only, the once crown of Lancastrian resorts can console herself by remembering that across the Pennines, on the rival White Rose Coast, on a dead straight line to the tiniest fraction of latitude, Ravenspur, where Henry IV once landed to claim that other Lancastrian crown, is now a sepulchred city, far out beneath the invading sea. But, for the whole world, the loss is always larger than the gain. The net adverse balance being those 10 or 11 square miles a year. Take the mileage of the 5 continents, and find out how long we have. The rivers. They wear away their channels and bear downward, in their muddied waters granite and lime and sand, our stolen foothold and heritage, downward always, denudationally, to the sea. In their castings the earthworm and the white ant bring up, moles and rabbits burrow up, annual mountain immensities of under-earth to the surface, made loose, comminuted, prompt to be blown away by the wind or carried by raindrops to the rivers, and, so at last, these also to the sea. Glaciers assist. Ice meteors clash in the air. The force of gravity solemnly pulls its weight, while the wind, from the shore carrying light particles seaward, from the sea beating against the loosened rocks, with fierce loose grains of sand, makes aeolian erosion not the least of the many forces working to disinherit us, and to drown, last and victorious, mother of terror, man's first home and final enemy. There is the sea herself, mightier than all these her helpers. She abates not, nor assuages. Against the world's 200,000 miles of coastline she wars unceasingly. She batters with stone and shingle, with her tides and her currents, her unseen salts and her seen white tempests. She beats, she eats, she crashes, she corrodes. At long last she will have us. The ultimate land for man's feet will be swallowed. The waters shall cover the earth. Drought. Not water, but dearth thereof, not drowning, but drouth, a negative mode for our finishing, and one therefore that has occupied less place in the fears and imaginations of men. Yet, though there's no story spread wide to match the flood story, shortage of water is like to have been more frequent and more fatal than excess thereof, at any rate since measurable antiquity. More men and beasts have died of it. In how many famished synagogues have not the dark Talmudic solemnities against the dryness been accomplished unto Jehovah? From how many ravenous mosques has not the droned salat for rain gone up to the steel blue skies and Allah above them? Through how many Persian temples have not the long incantations against Apaosha, the drought demon, mournfully sounded for the ears of Ormazd? Under how many African prayer trees has not the magical howl for the raindrops been uttered to move mumbo-jumbos? Gradually, through long ages, the earth is drying up. Within observable geological time, water has diminished. It is still diminishing. It will go on diminishing. We shall die parched. Water, and with it life, will one day disappear from the globe. A usual estimate of the world area lost by water to land is some 10 or 11 square miles a year. Take the measure of the 7 seas, and find out how long we have. The chief considerations urged on behalf of this diametrically opposite view are diametrical denials of the chief considerations set forth for watery triumph. Leveling of lands is admitted, up to a point. Assuaging of waters has more than kept pace. Rain may do its share of dissolving and carrying away. Much more of it penetrates through the porous earth into the lower soil, where it is crystallized, converted into hydrates, and so lost to the liquid cause. Besides, there is always less of it. The atmosphere is drier, clouds fewer than they were. God's rainbow promise was cynical. Wind and sun may have destroying action. Their drying action is mightier. All coasts where the prevailing winds are landward are increased by new stretches of sand dunes. Ocean, the supposedly all-powerful, is in open battle, losing more than she gains. The waters shall fail from the sea. He hath said to the deep, be dry. Mere trees keep pace with her. In Florida the mangoes are thrusting out seaward in wide swamps. Rivers may carry away, but not much of what substance they do sweep down is finally lost. Behold the deltoid map. Nile's great pushes northward, thrusting the Midland Sea aside. Ganges and Brahmaputra share a mouth, whose long teeth, every year longer, gnaw southward into the Gulf of Bengal. Half Louisiana is but Mississippi's sharp. Hand in hand, against the water work all other terrestrial agencies, atmospheric agencies. The air itself is slowly dribbling off into outer space, its moisture with it, eruptive ones. In the period of intenser volcanic activity soon to appear, a few 100,000 folk here, and there may be killed, but the human race as a whole will win respite. The craters will spew up empires of lava to add to our landed store. One first-class eruption alone will throw forth enough land from the bowels of the earth to make up for millenaries of erosion. Animal ones, mightier than earthworm for the water's side, fight polyp and coral for the waterless. After a submarine eruption, the coral insects at once set to and build around the new-formed crater. One pink generation dies. The next one begins on the skeletons, pitilessly, as calcareous platform for its own campaign. Land peeps out. The mariner sees before him a new atoll not seen on his chart, a truly magical new island of desire. Ocean is that much the smaller. Squarest denial is reserved for the two prime aqueous arguments. First, that the sea has in point of evident fact gained on the land. Become a sea, the sea become a shore. Far from the sea sea-cockles often lie, and anchors old are found on mountains high. That winds, the waters have shifted, but they have lost the vast bulk of the Ganges Delta and Gangetic plains. If it shows how vastly the Himalayas must have been lowered to build them, shows chiefly that what the heights were denuded of has not been lost for terra firma. The cyclic seas once swallowed up Gondwanaland, the old great Indian Atlantis. The aquaphobe cycle replied by building up the new great peninsula of Hindustan. Second, that there is now more water than land. There is more land than water. It is only the trifling mass of the sea depths that is greater than the trifling mass of the raised earth. Below the deepest Pacific soundings, as below all the continents, there is solid earth right down unto the fires within. Taking the total cubic capacity of the globe, solid outnumbers liquid a multitude of times. As the earth ages and shrinks, this disproportion will augment, slow desiccation continuing till the last drop of water is dried up, till the world is a desert of dead men. Consider also the heavens. The moon, being smaller than the earth, dried and died sooner, and now is a cloudless, sealess, waterless world, image of what we one day shall be. Venus, our younger sister, still modestly veiled in a garment of white clouds, is an image of our fresh innocence in the past, a world of young sparkling waters. Mars, our elder brother, has few clouds left to cover him. He is parching rapidly. There roll no oceans more for his warlike ships to ride on, only inland black seas, paltry oceans. Along his two belts the thirsty deserts are spreading. In the holiest land, not all the gold of Zionism will make the milk and honey flow again. The waves of the Sahara now greet the waves of the sea, and have long engulfed the granary of Rome, devouring Rome. Despite Wall Street, the great American desert remains one, along Capricorn. The South Australian and South African and South American wastes are not receding any more than the vaster opaline wastes on Mars, who still has vegetation in his dried sea bottoms, as here the last herb will sprout feebly from the parched Pacific floor, being made up of 7 parts water in 10. From a water-losing much sooner than from a land-losing planet man is doomed to go. Before the globe was cool enough for water to appear, organic life did not exist. Carbon could not combine to form the plasm. It will not exist when the globe is too cold for water to remain. An ark for the deluge, there's no ark against the drought. Without water, vegetation must die, and there are herbivorous creatures that live on it, and we that live on them both. Surely the people is grass. Averages and likelihoods, either knaves or fools. Is it paradox to say that the average man has about equal chances of dying of thirst in Arabia, or of drowning in the Atlantic, of succumbing to dropsy or disease of dryness? For these two hold pace with each other, cancel each other, defeat each other, in tercius equilibrium delay each other, until that far day when the earth, having eluded all accidents and pulled through all illnesses, will perish only when her hour is up of old age, or its other name, the cold. Cold. Not accident nor illness, mishap nor malady, not warmth nor water nor desire of water. But the cold is this, at last, the doom inevitable, the patient doom that can outweigh the others, that all they should fail us will not fail. Many, perhaps most, adherents of the no-water school think we shall hardly get so far as to fail of direct drought. Water, which absorbs, retains, and gives out again the heat the sun sendeth, in slowly disappearing, is rendering it slowly colder. No oxygen will save when that fractional drop of water becomes more fractional. The world will become too cold to live in, as a result of its dryness, before it becomes too dry. He enables the plants to assimilate their food from the air, and so is the author of all fruits, flowers, and trees. The wine we drink and the wood we burn are directly informed of him. The warmth they give us is indirectly his. His spots pulsate, and we pulsate in answer. Electricity, radioactivity, and their thousand-daughter inventions are his, and the force in our brains and in our bodies. In him we live and move and have our being. Without him we are not, and he is dying. Chemical processes reinforce the contractional one. Radioactive processes the chemical. The transmutation of his store of radial elements is a process almost everlasting, ensuring him effluence of light, almost stanchless. His positive and negative ions bombard each other, whose mutual annihilation secures their common eternity as heat. Above all, he is young, still in the bright earlier yellow heat stage that, on one of the stubborner new theories of stellar evolution, precedes the white heat of middle life, and far precedes the sere later yellow heat stage, the second childhood. If chemically engendered, his warmth has not long to last. A piece of coal is soon burnt out, though radial transmutation be proceeding, and the loud cannonades of ionization either is at best an almost eternal process, which means nothing, piteous nothing. The meteors are paltry helpers. If he attracted enough of them to be worthwhile, his size would continually be increasing, and it is not increasing. Above all, he is old, astrophysically provable in the second yellow era, chronometrically classified by spectral seniority. The stars are known by their age. And they pass through 7 ages, passing from one to the next with as much choice or chance of rebellion as has he, whether the sun's epoch be that of early middle age or late. The difference is at most between a very little more than half his course to run, or a very little less. The whole course must be run, till the seventh age and last, despite cyclical reversions, such as the present warm spell, following the last ice age. And even though the ice ages be not caused, or not chiefly caused, by diminution in the solar heat, but by this or that wayward difference of ellipticity in the it will continue till we huddle on the equator. Man will fight his fate. He will adapt himself. Even today he can survive in parts of Siberia that in January are no warmer than the moon. He will adapt nature, will learn to utilize the Earth's internal heat, if need be moving underground to become a cave dweller again, and to economize the sun's. By when, despite all strugglings, all undreamt marvels, all delays, the temperature must have fallen by 40 or 50 degrees everywhere, Earth will have changed from anything we can imagine, will have dwindled to a belt of equatorial Eskimos, white girdling the icebound tropics. Dimness of anguish, dayfall of the world. God will have fulfilled his grim promises. He will have darkened the sun in his going forth. He will have made their vintage shouting to cease. Down by 60 or 70, there we no life more. And earth, bleak charnel house, a whited sepulchre. The oceans, if still existent, will be of ice. The clouds, if still any, will be of snow. No wind, no warmth, no rain, no flesh wherein is the breath of life. The cold and the darkness, the last man will have lain long unburied across the equator of the aging, wizened globe. Long have forgotten the story of splendor and sorrow of the strange race that perished with him. Long have forgotten the dwindling purple sun his eyes beheld in the moment when they closed forever. Like the frozen corpse, or vespillo of corpses, still whirling around him, the sun in his turn will die. A solid crust will form, gases will become oceans, molten lava dry land. Death will come upon him more quickly. He will receive no vivifying rays from outside, as the earth did from him. The sun will have no sun. More swiftly will his oceans turn to ice, his atmosphere descend on him as a pall of fine white snow. Crash, but earth herself, who for all the harm frost could do her, might go on traveling round the dead sun forever. The globe too, this orb of solid matter, will have an end. Whether early, in time to preclude man's separate dooms, or late infinite ages after he has gone. Which end is collision, impact, dissolving crash. Not probably with a comet, though that derided chance, being also in the nature of a concussion, a catastrophe, may lift up high again its fiery head, nor with a meteor. No bolide or shooting star ever experienced has been large enough to do the world grave damage. Leave alone, demolish it. No Bethel ever fallen from heaven and erected on earth has stood higher than 3 of its worshippers. Not great Diana of the Ephesians, nor the Baetilical idol of Zeus Teleus at Tegea, nor Jacob's pillar of thanksgiving at Luz Bethel itself. There may of course be meteor troops many times more numerous, with each trooper many times bigger, than anything deducible either from past knowledge, or from present acquaintance with friendly aquarids and greminids and leonids, since meteorites come from outside the solar system. How affirm anything absolute, whether as to their maximum size or their maximum speed? The meteor death roll through history is so far too. A peasant once in India, a cow long ago in Brazil, nor with a planet. Their courses are ordered like our own, and will remain separate and regular while ours does. Perhaps with the sun, if we his satellites, moving ever quicker and ever nearer him, should one day fall on him bodily. Of all the stories, as of all the theories, this one alone has found acceptance of pure mathematics. Elsewhere so scornful. This one alone has been prophetically worked out to the last omega of the last perfect formula. If mathematics is valid, this is valid. For the solar tides are lengthening the period of rotation of the Earth, till one day, some 500,000 million years from now, it must become longer than the period of rotation of the Moon. This latter will then be retarded. After her untold ages of recession, the Moon will stand still. Then, very slowly, begin to return. By when in our sight she is equal to 20 suns, the fierce tides we shall raise on her will break her body up. She will bombard us with lunar pieces 2 miles, 10 miles thick. The whole side of her facing the Earth will burst open. She will torrent forth streams of white lava, liquid fragments larger than Sicily, to burn, bury, and ravish the whole world's face. She will split in two. Sooner or later, in process of unwearying time, time that goes on forever, each star of heaven encounters each other's star. Observed collisions are not rare. Collisions unobservable from Earth must be taking place continually in the unsearched depths of the universe. One day, sooner or later, unobservable from the unsearched depths of the universe, our own collision will take place. Our sun, with his whole subsequent convoy, rammed into steam by another. Later, it may be, the crowded streets of space are streets of voidness, and today, as it befalls, we are journeying along a particularly empty and uninhabited wide road. Dark unseen suns, once thought more numerous than seen ones, have, by new gravitational calculations on the speed of the latter, been reduced to the pure darkness of non-being. The star we are making for, scared Vega in the Lyre, is making away in her turn. A star's chance of collision, Oppin's one authority, whose equations are given, is 1 in 100,000 billion, or 6 followed by 17 naughts. We are as likely to crash, declares another doctor, whose calculations are however withheld, as 2 balloons sent up at different ends of Russia. The stars have their orbits like the planets. On some regular plan, unknown but harmonious, their movements through the celestial spaces are adjusted. A collision only happens when something goes wrong. How often, how imminent, is that? Not all the stars, live or dead, can be moving away from each other. In space Euclidean or non-Euclidean, in common sense, 4-dimensional, or 3, as many must be moving nearer each other, towards disaster as away from it. Some order in the star streams, harmony of the heavens, music of the spheres, is predictable. The Empyrean as a perfect mechanism without flaw or disturbance is not. Disasters disprove it. Often and imminently, something goes wrong. Any moment, we may strike a nebular stretch of heaven. Such regions are full of solid matter, stardust, in-drifting meteorites, and the like. The sun will be pulled into streamers, tearing forth to greet the Arcturian dragons of fire. In half an hour we shall be fused out of all identity, a drop in their chaos. And many a star is mightier than Arcturus, and many are nearer, many faster. One in Columba runs 2 million miles an hour. Sooner or later, assuredly, with a star. Yet collision, which thus includes grazing and mere propinquity, is too narrow a word. Collision, which implies splintering impact of solid bodies, is too massive a word. Collision, which in lubberly portrayal of unliving earths in lumbering percussion, conjures up no vision of the dying crying souls upon them, is too abstract, too astronomical a word. Collision, the one fate though outstay the others, partakes of the nature of them all. Like the cold, irrevocable, like the comet, coming at an hour unknown, from a direction unknown, a chance, not a process, a crash, not a geological creeping. To re-die, death nova will be birth nova, as the nebula which gave us life was born itself of death, in the crash and ruin of life preceding. The heavenly colossal catastrophes are death, they are life. Collision makes, collision kills. Out of the chance riot of stars came worlds, came living existence, came we. In new chance riot we shall depart. The heavens go crashing and whirling. The universe forms, unforms, reforms. The terror rolls on. What is it? What means it? What is my soul in that universe? May God have mercy. God. Will he have mercy? Impiously our attention has all been devoted to modes of material destroying of a material world, as though no spirit breathed through it. Atheistically, only to so-called natural ways of termination. In these men have believed, each religion, each sect, each subsect holding its different guess as to his choice of hour, contributing its variant as to his choice of method, ready to fight or to die for its own terminal detail, ready to murder. Decreation. The sudden unframing of the worlds by the word of him who framed them. Fiat, a shake of the scepter, and then nothing. God is the self and essence of each of the elements, whose temporal manifestations have here been humbly unfolded. He is water, he is ice, himself is the stars. Our God is a consuming fire. He will act through these his elements not modelly, to human sense perceptibly, but essentially without circumstance, extrinsicality or phase. As it was in the beginning, when all was without form and void, till his spirit, upon the face of the unborn waters, a moving mist, a quickness which my God hath kissed, and hatched the world, so likewise shall it be in the end. The Spirit of God shall move upon the face of the living waters, unkiss, unquicken, decreate them, and all shall be without form and void. As mysteriously as it began the dream will end, the mirage tumble, a magical moment, and then nothing. The strange modern people do not think so. The normal, abnormal, Western man of 1930, who swims abreast of the currents of his time, who accepts the typical teaching of his day and generation, who, learned or lewd, awarely or unawares, is influenced by it, probably does not think so. Yet for some minds it has changed some large aspects of the changeable, and has given them a new conception, as right, or as the conceptions from the caveman onwards that preceded it, of finite things. How these are likely, though not. Belief in aboriginal God, or in the soul as a phenomenon not born of nor bound up with matter, or in unseen worlds beyond the seen one, need not exclude the expectation that the seen one will end, or appear to end, in one of such 6 ways as set. Not everyone convinced of spiritual reality, or of some unknown form of reality beyond spiritual reality, is convinced that physical reality is meaningless and the disappearance of its familiar shapes a fact of no interest, a phenomenon of no, though God is God, and the mystery unconjecturable. How and when it will put off its present garments is not unworthy man's conjecture, a speculation with which natural science, as much as any other scheme or system, may profitably and prophetically concern herself. Her type of guess may be the right one, and frost, flame or flood the end of soul with body. The conclusion, together with the world visible, of the world invisible of good and evil, joy and suffering, love and terror, that has filled and formed every heart that has beaten or yet shall beat. When fear deferred maketh the heart sick, when the loved one, the one lover, lies in peril, the clutching dread that precedes is crueler than the long sorrow that follows, and as terror of things to come is more than all grief for things past, so time, whether past or to come, is more terrible than space, eternity more awful than the abyss. Zeroless everlasting. How? Was a hard query with many answers. Each of these adds its own complications to the questions: when, soon or late, what notice, at what stage of humanity's career. Each several mode of the world's ending brings several guesses at its time. The possibilities are added and multiplied, like the biblical sums and astronomical ciphers themselves. This year, the astrologers then will allow the astronomers in humble confirmation to calculate the star's mass and class, its composition, its rate of advance. Till then, the date-givers will ignore their rivals and continue to pore over their abacuses and swanpins and horoscopes and Sibylline books. Till then, the scientists will denounce their rivals as charlatans and continue to pore over their equations and test tubes and microscopes and statistical charts. The great sacred number of the Babylonians was 12,960,000, giving a date similar to some yesterday's estimates of the sun's life. Buddhism, early and late, has had many notational guesses. Jewish apocalyptic, a stream from the waters of Babylon, flows from the captivity to far beyond the dispersion with a ceaseless glitter of rabbinical numbers. For a while, the year 195 stood favorite. Write the name of the herbs, the number of the year of the destruction of the city, and all else besides. Certain it is, before that date, and when it turned out to be wrong, for more than 8 centuries after it, all other numeral years, such as 3's 65 the year of days, 6,300 the grand climacteric, and the giant numbers of 1 Chronicles 21, but only as incidental to the Parousia, the second coming, the new earth, and Christ's millennial reign upon it great and glorious, which only his children would share. Millenarianism, seconding martyrdom, proved most successful of recruiting sergeants. The Christians grew rapidly. Tertullian was Achilliast and Commodian, also Cerinthus, Apollinaris, Julius Africanus, Nepos of Egypt, Methodius of Tyre. Many ardent sects, chiefly on the still uncertain borderline between Judaism and Christianity, Ebbonists and Montanists and others, made Chiliasm their main tenet. Soon, however, the opposition showed itself more powerful. The Elogi, the Gnostics, the Neoplatonist mystics were all anti-millennial, and after some early famous wavering, Saint Augustine. By this time, the catastrophic atmosphere was clearing away. Bishops reconciled to the empire found it impolitic, when not impossible, to consider its 1,000 years of sin ending in fire and doom, to allow Rome Galilean no better portion than Rome Capitoline. Self-interest, rechristened common sense, forbade them to think millennially. Only madmen, sorcerers, Asiatics, could believe in such rabbinical vaporing. Only heretics. After Augustine, Chiliasm was proclaimed a heresy, no longer necessary as a propagandist tenet, a bait to the sensual-minded. The millennial belief gradually changed in character. The optimistic element, the watchers for the glorious new kingdom on earth, dropped away. The pessimistic element, the waiters for the inglorious end of the old kingdom of earth, only remained. Could that new ceremony, wedding his city with the ring and high splendor as bride of the Adriatic, have been reconciled with a belief that the bridal hour of God was for the morrow? Feudal barons, feudal bandits, invading Christ's churches to fill them with horrible songs, raiding holy nunneries to fling Christ's sisters into dungeons, chained there for outrage, treading the common man Christ had come to save down everywhere, under heel and sword. Christ's vicar himself on impious knees before Astarte. Everywhere robbing, sacking, murdering, suffering. Highways troubled, forests filled with violence. Huns from over the Alps, Saracens from over the Straits, Vikings from over the North Waters. Everywhere famine and pest. For food men hunted men, or stole into the churchyards and dug up dead men for their nourishing. Of the black plague of the 990s none died, with loathsome face, and in pain more loathsome, dragons in the sky, stars falling that were tears for man's fate, rain of blood, rivers of blood. The facts tilted. The year came, the end of the world came not. Though discouraged, the Chilius were not dismayed. There had been a slight miscalculation. It was not the year 1000, but the 1000th year from Christ's mission, passion, and so 1030 and 1033 offered new chances. These proved not less illusory. The millennial fear lay down beside the millennial hope, buried together. Year without the end. Stoffler chose February of 1524, and by flood, as Saturn, Mars, and Jupiter would then be together in the fishes. Dr. Auriol with his ark made ready. It was the driest February known. Stoffler tried again. Hostile contemporaries, with a sneer, note 1598 as unusually barren of happenings. Surely an exaggeration, for the waters covered, if not the earth, at least the great armada. In the Roman Church itself, numerical prophecy has had slightest renewal. It was into the hands of the rabbis and the Protestants, witches of Endor and warlocks of England, that the game now passed. The rabbis reveled in one pseudo-messianic year after another. Apostates like Sabbatai Zivi, Sabbat, quacks like Mordecai of Eisenstadt, and sincere and frantic visionaries unlike either, proclaimed Antichrist born in Babylon almost every year, and each was to be the last. Even 1666, the beasts, the Neronic, though with London in flames it stood not signless, ended tamely, by merely ending. The 19th century revival was relative only. The fact that such beliefs were making headway again had no more effect on the century's triumphant march than its belief in Christianity itself. In England, the number of folk so convinced of this date, or that as on the whole to order their lives in accordance with their conviction may now, and then have reached 7 figures. The number who went further, and in view of the worldly end sold all. If the quality of the enthusiasts must, by the ordinary snobbery of social standards, or the extraordinary snobbery of intellectual ones, be put lower than the quantity, that matters little. Most of what science teaches is as silly, and much of what dukes believe. If their enthusiasm was sorely tried, that mattered less. Failure never deterred the prophets from beginning over again, and new prophets from beginning afresh, and old ones from being disinterred. Mother Shipton was dragged in splendor from her merited obscurity. Our school stood near her cave, but we entered it rarely, as the revival of her reputation had raised the admission fee to the, for some of us, unmanageable sum of 3d. In the 80s she did good work. The end will come. In 1881, spring passed, the fatal season, spring in which earth was created, and, as most think, shall be decreated, and autumn, and the last of December, through half England, in north and west, in the 3 widest shires most widely, villagers had spent whole nights in the fields confessing their sins to the dark skies and crying for mercy. Crying wasted, for nothing happened. Ah! 'Twas a trifling error, a minor misreading of the text, reliance on a corrupted version. The true version ran, "The world at an end will view," in 1882. This was a falling off. There was a falling off also in the night attendance in the fields. So discouraging indeed that Mother Shipton was put to grave again, and none went to the trouble of inventing. At an end, we'll see. At an end, be sure. Their main source of inspiration, recruitment and income. One year the fear became almost nationwide. Its protagonist was William Miller. William Miller was a simple New Englander. He had served against Britain in the Canadian War, and after that one experience of the wider world settled down to farm life in the country. There he got religion, and religion him. He became a student of the prophets, especially of Daniel, in whose apocalyptic pages God suddenly showed him the secret. In the year 1843 the world would stop. William had no fear for himself. Only fear that the time might be too short for him to spread the tidings to those who were chosen, and for them to prepare their souls for the day of destruction they alone would escape. He seems to have been a disinterested man, desiring neither power, admiration, nor money. From the crucifixion of Christ to taking away the daily abomination, or paganism 475. From the taking away of pagan rites to the setting up of the abomination of desolation, papal civil rule 30. From the setting up of the papal abomination to the end 260. From the taking away of papal civil rule to the first resurrection, and the end of the world 8:45, 2300. The clue number was thus 2300, proceeding. Calculation 2, from 2300. Subtract 70 weeks 490, 1810. Add to this the term of the Savior's life 33. End of the world 843. The proof was irrefragable. But God in his word had heaped up proof upon proof. Calculation 3 from the crucifixion, taking away the daily abomination. Item of first calculation 475. Add our Savior's age 33 and Daniel's number 1335 1368. End of the world in 1843. Calculation Ave for the full term of the vision, as before exemplified 2300. Subtract date of the commandment to rebuild Jerusalem BC 457. End of the world 1843. Calculation V. The house of Israel are to be punished yet 7 times for their sins. Leviticus XXXVI. That 7 years of 360 days equals 2520. Subtract date of first captivity in Babylon BC 677. End of the world 843. And so on. The exact day, though based on proofs less profuse, was also revealed. It would be the vernal equinox. No more world by midnight on March 21st, 1843. Hypocrites are fewer than alleged, and deceivers most often self-deceivers. The movement was a splendid one to be in. Joshua derived pathological delight from its excitements, delicious pride from its leadership, and it was whispered, ample booty, from the open-handedness of its adherents. Besides, it might all be true. If there were exploiters, there were also enemies. Orthodox pulpits denounced these pernicious doctrines, so harmful to their own. Really nasty folk alleged that the building was insured for 7 years. This was denied, and to clinch their sincerity, the Millerites pointed to the furniture they had given away, the farms they had sold, the orchards they had cut down, the crops they were abandoning. Then came the comet, the most terrible and triumphant of modern times, 300 million miles long, a svelte sword straight and unwavering, cutting the night sky in two. The sign. William was faint with ecstasy. Pandemonium and paroxysm reigned. The hour came. It went. Nothing happened. Nothing. In misery of beaten hope, through the dawn of March 22nd the crowds moved homewards crushed and silent, or weeping. In another place a group waited in white ascent robes. A suggestion of elder Joshua's, though when these wedding garments proved ineffective, he promptly denied it. One man fitted a turkey's wings to his shoulders and tried to fly. He fell and broke his arm at Westford, Mass. The local Millerites had assembled in their farmhouse headquarters, proposing to spend Earth's ultimate evening together in prayers until, just before the midnight hour, they would move out into the open for their ascension. Now Crazy Amos, the local drunk, was not a believer. Knowing the Millerites were all safe indoors, he stole out onto the village green hard by and blew a great blast on a great horn that was his cherished toy. The listeners heard. In a body rushed out, madly jostled each other as they fought for the best places to be caught up from. Standing aside in the discreet darkness, Crazy Amos put his horn to his mouth and blew a still more fearful blast, and another, and another. Glory, glory, hallelujah! They shouted, raising their arms with almost unbearable yearning to heaven. A few actually rose in the air. The second ascension had literally begun, when others, whom faith had not prevailed to carry off their feet, spied them was blaring away. The reaction of shame, disappointment, and fatigue was terrible. Like a flock of scared sheep they shambled indoors, Crazy Amos jeering after them. Fools! Go dig your potatoes. For the angel Gabriel, he won't go a-digging 'em for you. So everywhere the night had come and gone. The prophecy was a delusion, William and Joshua deceivers. But saints, like scientists, have rich subterfuge in modification that laymen must envy them, and a hold on their followers that most naked defeat does not lightly relax. Some of these did indeed drop away, for whom the emotional recoil was too violent, or the rage at finding themselves without their chattels. The 1917 prophecy, based on fresh researches in Revelation, connected up with the marks of the beast, the Kaiser, and made known throughout England by showers of pamphlets that once or twice disquieted the censor, appears to have left the nation quite unmoved, which cared less about the end of the world than about the end of the war. The received prophets of today, when not the political economists, are the physical scientists. And among these latter the eccentrics here and there who think, or can be represented as thinking, that geological or astronomical probabilities imply an early natural end, include not one who fits his fancy to the Procrustean bed precise number. Even if the end be natural and near, they do not know the date. If it be supernatural, nigh or far, their numeralist rivals do not date. They have none commanding general agreement or any wide adherence whatsoever. They disagree too much among themselves, and have too often been shown wrong. All of which proves, as it disproves, nothing. Number, as long ago the Pythagoreans saw, is bound up with the inmoster of reality, is nearer reality than time or space, which our teachers are now discarding. Number they cannot discard. 3 is 3, 70, at any speed, in any frame of reference, under any theory of post-Einsteinian spacetime. It is a first constituent of being. When the exact future motions of all the stars shall be known, when every fact about suns, moons, and Earth's movement and mass, tempo and temperature, shall be garnered and verified, then they will calculate far forward till they find the clock moment of the crash or cold, the year and the number of the end. Number will be seen, in a mode half comprehended, as existence itself, deciding the fate of each phase of existence. We are beads on the abacus, digits in the cosmic sum. God has fixed the magical number of the world. Not yet have we the clue to find it. Next year, aside from the named year, early or late, stand the two chief temporal expectations, broadly grouped and broadly contrasted. The end of the world is at hand. It is very far off. The former has been the faith of many peoples, of savages who have attained to thinking on such matters, of the classic nations of antiquity, of the Hebrews, and inheriting from them of the early Christians, from whom we of the West inherit our ideas on last and first things. Fear prompted this faith. Man dreaded the end, therefore he believed it near, as he believed all his enemies near, and as usually they were, want and plague and tribal foes, none of them lurking far away. As fear diminished, the end receded. But the decline of corporate fear being a mark only the very latest generations on the earth, there is no reason to think that it is permanent, or that the optimist age is not already departing, if we are still a while under its bright or cynical beams, and unlike men of other ages, gaily postpone the inevitable, and like ostriches of all ages bury our heads in the solacing sands of time. It was not always so, nor will be again. Seconding and sanctifying fear revealed religion, encouraged the early expectation. Organized religion enforced it as useful to God's ministers, giving them power over the flock. Reason bore religion out. A few thousand years had sufficed to run up the zenith of time. A few thousand more would suffice to touch nadir. It was illogical to assume the length of the world's future disproportionate to its past, and the length of the past was known. The Almighty was great, and Archbishop Usher was his prophet, that prelate, more locally and more culpably celebrated, as the Irishman who goaded James the First to crueler persecutions of Irishmen, having secured national renown through his kindly apothegm, "Toleration is a grievous sin," went on to earn cosmic fame by laying it down once and for all. The world was created in 4004 BC. He did but set the fashion of precise chronological margins that persisted to the family Bibles of our childhood, did but nail down to a year what Christendom already believed, to a year or two, most men before him, and until the new geology, since, held that the past of the world was of the 6,000-year order. Why should its future be any longer? Reinforcing this common-sense deduction from the Usurian interpretation of biblical chronology stood the whole tradition of Christianity, which, from the lips of its founder, the writings of its first propagandists, and the experiences of its earliest days, had received deep impress of belief in adjacent catastrophe. Joseph said, "Verily I say unto you, that this generation shall not pass till all these things be done." St. Paul wrote, "The ends of the world are come." Peter, "The end of all things is at hand." St. John of the Revelation, "Behold, I come quickly." No subject that has ever engaged the minds of men has been more thought about or more written about than the words of Christ and the letters of his word, those bearing on the future most of any. It has been said that Jesus, an unlettered Jew, merely took over the popular eschatology of Jewish apocalyptic, adding a special niche for himself as hero of the second coming. Has been answered, Son of God. He foretold the end as men now. It has been asserted that he believed literally in the literal disasters, as in Matthew 24, that he foretold, and in their literal nearness. It has been replied that his language was throughout figurative, to every phrase a secret seraphic, meaning behind the plain one, and further that his thoughts, as recorded for us, have been colored by his more material-minded reporters. They are most frequent, most physical, and most fearful in the first gospel, fewest and least disastrous in the last, the second and third being respectively about 1/3 way and 2/3 way in between, which graduated rarefying of the catastrophic atmosphere corresponds with oddest exactitude to what little is known of the four evangelists, from Matthew, the Orthodox Hebrew, through practical Mark and professional Luke, to John, the Hellenized philosopher. Both views seem to contain truth. Jesus saw what he said, and believed what he saw, the darkness of destruction that the end will be. But in him, as in all who see the terror, and in him more than all others, the intensity of his vision transcended the illusion time. In his mind's eye the trillion years shriveled to pinpoint, and he described them as what they are. This generation of eternity, the synoptics and the apocalypse, however, which took the time phrases literally, had greater sway over the first centuries. None of the portents was lacking. That was an hour, more than most in the horrible pages of history, of evil and signs of evil, of cyclones and floods, famines and plagues, eclipses and comets, eruptions and earthquakes, wars and rumors of wars. Lust reigned in Rome, and sorcery and ruinous fire. Earth trembled and reduced Philadelphia to ashes. Under his ashes Vesuvius buried Herculaneum and Pompeii. Through the wide Oecumene the legions were slaughtering. Boadicea and her Britons in the island west, Teutons in the boundaried north, Parthians in Parthia, the chosen people in their chosen land, till after the cruelest siege we have word of, when them drove stakes through them from middle to mouth, wrapped them in lion skins to be torn by the devouring dogs, resinously trussed them as live torches to illumine the night's imperial gardens, drove his less laughing chariot down the aisle of human candles as they flamed, calling on Christ and calling him Antichrist. His successors, 4 in 1 year, swam through each other's red blood to the purple. One hacked to pieces, one slain with his own hand, one knived on the Gemonian stairs, one living a while to encompass the downfall of Jerusalem. Rapine and cruelty ruled the earth, whose heart spewed cruelty and rapine. Such were the days in which our religion began. No syllable of the messianic woes was lacking. Expectation of earth's speedy judgment filled Christianity from its cradle. A special form of that expectation was the millennial. When the calendar gave this the lie, the more general anticipations of an early end flagged also. By the end of the Middle Ages, side by side always with the numerical, they revived somewhat. E Castilla y Alin, Nuevo Mundo dio Colon. Though that new world turned out to be only America, he had discovered it in mistake for paradise, which he thought lay eastward of India, for which he set sail ere it should be too late. Martin Luther hurried also to finish his Bible in time. For a while again every comet, every least change in the constellations, was taken for a sign of the approaching day, though with dwindling force and dwindling effects on life and conduct, the belief, like its dated variant, persisted as a wide and serious one through 2 or 3 centuries more. This is now guided by the physical scientists, and they are for far, not near. Their prophecies will be set forth in due place. But here, where the end proximate is contended for, the basis and general principle of their prophecies must in advance be questioned. The principle is probability. Uncalled not for a day but a generation, it is based on a logical theory of the world. The naturalists themselves are coming to see that matter may be illogical, anarchical, able at any moment to disobey. Above all, it is a rule that holds good over short periods only. The periods of the universe are long, when, pursuing probability, the calm apostles of distance proceed to base, when on how, selecting this way or that way for the end, posit each in its most absolute, its remotest form, they use another fallacy. It is a fundamental fallacy. For a light touch of each way or any could suffice. A 10% rise in the sun's temperature, no need for 100. A billion-mile passing of the star, not full percussion. One short cold snap, not final winter. Every new glacial period is colder. The next one may be too cold for life to live through. Every new interglacial period is shorter. The next one bids fair to reach not 50 centuries. Not the extreme hour of the frost eternal sounds our knell, but the first frost of autumn. we are well through the summer. If soon, sudden. While the end remote implies oftenest, though not obligatorily, that it will come snail pace, the idea of early conclusion comprises usually, though not necessarily, the notion of short notice or none. Surat of the troops. The trumpet shall sound. Whether man's almost universal instinct that he shall be cut off suddenly is the result of Bible or Koran in childhood, or whether Bible or Koran is the result of that instinct all-powerful through the childhood of the race. Almost universal indeed it. Spurts in the sun's heat or the star's speed, one flaw in the instrument uncorrected, one irregularity in the event unallowed for, one weakness in calculation or deduction, one sharp drop in the ice age thermometer or rise in the sun's, and all plans for preservation go agley. They base it also on expectation of a future race well able to exploit those methods. But man may move backwards, not forwards intellectually, or aside up some pudding bag of futile and feckless being. They themselves, their warring acolytes, the chronic hierophants who would harmonize, synthesize, their magic and discordant speech. Perhaps none of these, but plain men sent the plain upshot, that through their words and their worship the old God's life is made longer, time's boundaries pushed backward, world's respite increased. Fourthly, and fundamentally, on a consideration one by one of the various manners of the end, a distant answer to when is by probability deduced from the different answers to how. The most probable of these are those probably most remote. To each of the ways allot its percentage of likelihood, mode of world's end percentage of likelihood. Comet 1, 2, water 1. Drought 15, 80, 1. As based on the answers to how, puts early consummation beyond the pale of all human plausibility. Fifthly, and most persuasively, on the companion belief that the beginning is far away. Some may dislike the airs of the latest holders of the temple, their contempt for their predecessors, exaction of blind acceptance, unwillingness to see that as the wizards and astrologers to them, so they will appear to the next age's priests of. But once you accept their premises, once you share their assumption that the external world they speak you must admit them without rivals at explaining that world, and must applaud alike the triumphant mechanism they have built up on that assumption and the skillful notations in which they describe it, the chemical notation, the mechanical notation, the mathematical notation, the rows of huddling knots. Knots divorced, if not from beauty, from experience, not to be grasped with the brain, though the eye lends mystical help. A bit-by-bit method, dealing with moderate multiples, persuades a few. By express train the moon is only 6 months away. That flying Scotsman which for 8 hours bore you northwards you can perhaps, with an effort, conceive having carried you on for 500 times as far. The sun is not 400 times further again. You can, maybe, just visualize the journey. The old queen was born some 3 times as long ago as you and I. The jingling millions and billions are better. The rows of huddling knots, with their aid, how runs the answer? How long has the world been? Usher's brevity is brutally avenged. The new doctors vie in prodigious estimate. First the humble philologists, who for the evolution of human speech require a year allowance of some 80,000 months. Next the anthropologists, who put man's reign as man, since back in the early Miocene he took farewell of his anthropoid brethren at 200,000. Then the biologists, who for the full evolution of life want a mere 80 million. Passing from life to the lifeless earth. With the geologists we take a jump. The old man with his salt machine, turning it out like mince. How long has he been turning? All the rivers run into the sea. How many years has it taken them to bear down now sodium, allowing for so much originally present, so much blown back to the shore by winds, and this correction, and that. 600 million. Sea is deep, land is deeper. How many years for the depths of the different sediments that in earth to have been deposited, for the oldest Algonkins to be laid down, maybe. 1,650 million. Land and sea, in even battle, have since the beginning been warring together, an age of the raising of mountains alternating with an age of the lowering of lands. There have been such and such a number of alternations. How many years have been needed to fulfill them? A rough 1,800 million. Chemist joins geologist to take up the tale. Together they meditate on the radioactive elements in the Earth's crust. As Paracelsus saw long ago, all stones are philosophers' stones. Alchemy is a matter of temperature. Each metal holds within itself the principle of self-transmutation. Uranium, for instance, debauched uranium, goes on changing from one element into another, usually ending its fickle career as lead. The rake's progress is long. The spies of science have found out just how long. The rate of disintegration has been discovered, so that if there is so much uranium in a given rock and so much lead, the age of the rock is known. The figure for the oldest rocks is 1,900 million. Strike the balance of these four to get, as the age of the solid Earth, over 1,700 million, pass from geological to astronomical mysteries. The left-hand integer rises. 4 billion. The world, then, is held to have existed as a solid globe for 1,700 million, as a separate one for 4,000 million years, as though the clues Earth affords were not obscure enough in themselves. The varying ardor of the suitors, by interpreting them most variously, has made matters worse. The physicists, half envying Genesis, have assured her she is young, always construing her shy hints as conservatively and courteously as possible. The geologists are less gallant, the chemists mere churls. How bold was Lord Kelvin when, arguing from the laws of thermal conductivity, he demanded for the time since the crust became solid over 100 million years. Arguing from the polar flattening and the rate of rotation, several hundreds of millions. Yet to the salt or sediment schools, or the uranium, zirconium schools of today, he is a timid fellow, a second usher, as they, perhaps, someone's ushers tomorrow. Maybe the hints are deliberately misleading. Maybe, like ancient kings who hid the day of their birth, lest astrologers should cast them an ill horoscope, for a like reason the world hides hers. Somewhere in the numbered heart of God, her birthday is known, but not to human calculation, which can only use those poor averaged guesses at the past as ground, for new poor averaged guessing at the future, 4,000 million for the past. Now the evidence, though technical, that the Earth is a comparatively young Earth, with noontide and meridian far ahead, is described as overwhelming. And who make his expectation of life, as the Earth assessors ours, proportionately still longer, make it, with their new notions of matter, of star centers more radial than radium, of energy subatomic subeternal, of ions bombarding each other into outlandish senility, a wild 14-digit thing. Some billion. It being not known, nor to be sanely guessed, for how much of this 10 million period his radiation will be sufficient to keep Earth's creatures alive, nor what share of his future will be ours also, as Earth's ultimate figure choose one, somewhere, anywhere, between this outside limit for the Sun and the 7,000 million chosen for the Earth's chance on its own. Choose. Certain tendencies are no doubt strengthened by, after strengthening, this postponement. The decline of fear, the decay of religion, rising ambitions for man's destiny. Distance lends enchantment. The delectable mountains are ahead. We shall become supermen, then gods. There is time for anything, everything. This adjournment, like all adjournments, like all optimism, in press discourages action, its own desire. Time for everything means time for nothing. Dwell careless, eat, drink, and be merry. You've till the year 1 billion ere you die. Being built on the quicksands of contemporary speculation, the far-off dogma may crumble, of course, tomorrow. Choked by the armor of many dimensions it is forging for itself. Strangled by the mathematical network it is getting entangled in. Science will suddenly be seen, unseen, for the dream, outside God's reality, that it is. Then its prorogations will be denied, and a new vision of hope or despair, or neither, be revealed. The sign of the Son of Man in heaven? What shall it be? The destruction of Rome. While she lives, Aureal Imperial, Leonine Capitoline, o fior d'ognicita, donna del mondo. City of cities, Babylon the third city, caput mundi, then lives the world. When she falls, the world falls. To this day the Romans will have it. I am husband of a Roman and know that when the statue of Marcus Aurelius shall turn golden, again, then the sun shall turn black. That the last sunset over the Colosseum will be the last sunset over earth, or, not rather, the slow signs that science will discover. For if not soon, not sudden. Flood will advance painlessly, and to program. There'll be time to plant gopher trees. They will raise batteries against the cold, using devices and deftnesses we cannot conjecture, eking out the reduced rations of radiation according to a timetable corrected continually in their favor, and accepting defeat accurately forecast only when the sun as ally indispensable can help them no longer. Centuries soon, by high celestial mathematics, crash with comet or star will be deduced. Striking chance, size, speed, noxiousness, all will be published generations in advance. Never, world not longeval, but eternal, world without end. There is a halfway house, a high intermediate possibility of a termination so remote, so far beyond the proudest chain of ciphers in astronomy as, though short of eternity, to be for the human mind almost indistinguishable from it. Brahma divided the time of the world into days, each day consisting of 2,000 divine periods, each divine period consisting of 12,000 spiritual years, each spiritual year consisting of 360 terrestrial years of 360 days each. A day thus contains 3,110,400,000,000 days. How many days will there be? For a great period multiply by 4. How many great periods may there not be? Likewise modern lovers of number have imagined the time of the world as of a magnitude that bedwarfs the astronomer's billions. The total number of the atoms that make up this earth contains but some 60 naughts that make up the whole universe of matter, as today judged finite in space, some 400. That made up Archimedes' cosmos, as described in the Psalmites, the number transcending matter, the total of seconds in the universe, not of space, but of time, may run to a sum decillions of staircase numbers greater than those fourscore thousands of naughts, to a figure so flagrant that no way or system of human words or symbols is able to show forth or dimly shadow it. How many separate decillions of those decillions may there not be? It is vanity. In his sight all the naughts round all the universes are a noontide. They will pass. Eternity ahead of them will be no briefer than before. Beyond all septillions and decillions, beyond life and death sempiternally recurrent, thrones the pure form of the everlasting dogma. Without sensible change, without intervening destructions, without parcel or periods, the earth abideth forever. The phenomena of science and experience, the water and the cold, the maternal nebulae and paternal impacts that give birth and death and birth again, all matter and its manifestations, all visible tangible things, are pure illusion, a trick of the beholder's brain. There is no world. The world is but the form or mode of a dream or vision. In that dream sense in which it exists now, it will exist forever, though Brahma pass from dream into a dreamless sleep. Only apparently will the world come to end. The world is God. God by his nature is eternal. The world is eternal. Rome is deathless. His ego nec metas herum, nec tempora pono, Roma eterna, mundus eternus. From yet more orthodox throats the same witness is born. The earth, whatever the precise way, came out of the sun and consists of what were originally the sun's outer layers. These were made of the lightest atoms, the permanent atoms, the only ones not dissolvable into radiation atoms, the only matter not transformable into light. The sun, as after parenthood he remains, now consists of dissolubles only, whom the earth, consisting on the contrary of final inconvertibles only, will outlive, and all his brothers the mighty stars, avoiding also collision. Space as well as time being infinite, an encounter with other bodies need never take place. To assume that in infinite time it must, is to forget that infinite space redresses the balance. Sailing but bound for no port, from impact immune, of indestructible substance compounded, our globe will wander through the sunless, starless universe forever, which first end of the world has so far been used indifferently to mean the end of mankind, and the end of this globe he inhabits. The two are not the same, and except in a case like head-on collision, planet and people vanishing in vapor together will not be simultaneous. One of the great climacteric disasters will suffice to destroy him, while hardly more than ruffling the earth's surface. Or quite other factors, of a kind different from any yet alluded to, may, in conjunction with, or independently of natural change, sweep life but not earth away, or, in certain strange circumstances, the race may outlive the world. Encounter some galactic brother, for his crashing to his own, whichever the way, Earth's journey with living passengers is like to be much shorter than her time as a tomb, even though, through abrupt increase of our sun, or premature grazing by some other, the interlude between the two destructions were less than in the likelier instances, it would still be considerable. Literal simultaneousness, crew and the ship down together, is one chance in Brahmanic zeros. Man going need not mean all life going. Flood will not finish the fishes. Earth has her salamanders, if it is fire. Aside from those microbes who riot and revel in the boiling point of water, what mere lizard will not outlive us? She has her parasites who dote on congelation, if it be the cold, with polar moss and lichen to outstay the last tarrying bacillus. Will it be sooner? Without harm from the heavens will the race fail. Shall we go, without compulsion from outside nature, before we must? Astronomy, returning to the paths of her stepmother astrology, might cast a fatal horoscope. The sun, entering not this sign of the zodiac or that, but some field of unknown matter, could so transform the quality of his radiation as subtly, secretly, then, even at change in conditions, that was the white man's advent did silently and mysteriously, and more potently than his smallpox or syphilis or gin, deprive red men in North America and brown men in southern seas of their impulse to continue. So the advent of changed climate could, without slaughter spectacular, discourage men white and yellow and black, dash their virility, deprive them of all desire of duration, exclude such hybrid hypotheses, rule out every reason obliquely astronomical geological. Will man, left to himself, to his resources biological psychological, live as long as the Earth's conditions, left to themselves, permit him to? Facts are here outnumbered by fancies, more fanciful than those of the stargazers or million mumblers. The race grows ever stronger and more viable, physically. With better and more regular food, better and less hostile conditions of every kind, the stamina of the species is constantly improving. Whatever the future of eugenics, natality controlled and perfected not by blind instinct, but by instinct and intellect working wide-eyed together, it will be better than its past. It has no past. Even without it, we've come far. While they ever since have marked time, the human average of health, beauty and functional fitness has marched on to where we now stand, upright in body and soul, beholding them face to face to love our women, looking no more at the ground but at the, because conscious, future progress will be swifter, in half the time covering double the distance between Piltdown and 1930. Thence running forward on a swift straight track unto the goal, triune and shining, of perfect health, perfect strength and perfect beauty. Intellectually, it is a demonstrable, measurable fact that man's brain, instrument and symbol, his superiority over his animal forebears and contemporaries, has grown and is growing in size, complexity, adaptability, in power and promise of power. It has outdistanced the brain of every other creature and every other organ of man's own. The race grows ever weaker and less viable, physically. That better and more regular food exists only in the imagination of those few, 1 in 6, is it, of the earth's inhabitants, or 8, who have it also in their bellies. Over the crawling plains of the east, over the swollen stone agglomerations of the west, famine and undernourishment gauntly reign, a monarchy almost absolute. Conditions of life, as each year life moves to the million cities, get each year worse. Disease more than keeps pace with the doctors, who less than keep pace with the germs and the rats. Little babies, brought forth on bare garret floors in the starving cold and cruel squalor of 20th century night, die faster than the rats or the germs. Biologically, we are retrograde, and soon will be degenerate. Our fur has gone, our hair is going, our toes are numbing and our teeth dropping out. The look of age is upon us. Compared to the proud races of prehistory, we are a decaying, doddering stock. What biological progress have we marked this last 10,000 years? What shadow of a sign of any such progress is there? Physique may be improving among the well-to-do, numerically insignificant, nuptially sterile. Stamina is declining in all classes. Civilization is sapping man's vigor, blunting his senses, always reducing the scope for his endeavor. He no longer needs strong right arm nor mental resource, no longer need fend for himself. The tribe, the state, the superstate is his protector, his poisoner, according him cheap survival for an ever smaller expenditure of brain and brawn. When tools for mental work soon appear, the brain's brightest regions will follow little toe and little finger into atrophy. Birth control is reducing the proportion of the mentally fittest and allied with the doctors, though for the moment they are its foes, will hasten the decline and the fall. Hastened also, from all sides the bad movement gathering momentum, by the brain wear and nerve strain of the coming centuries of nightmare speed, noise and number. Card index will not save, nor catalog. Even our teachers are wavering. At last anthropology, turning from Tennyson to truth, begins sulkily to allow that the common tradition of the race is right, that Arcadia long ago existed, that the golden age once was, that everywhere there is less liberty, less equality, less fraternity among the civilized nations of the present than among the uncivilized nations of the past, that every year, since in that fateful hour by the fruitful river civilization was first invented, injustice, the spoilers shout for battle. 1914 outshone its predecessors, but will look dim beside its successors, now being made ready by patriotism run to paroxysm, fair pollen turned to foul poison, soon to triumph with the deadly formulae of harlotry, crueler than of old, marks progress organizational, orgiastical, on the sporadic sexual injustice of earlier tribes. In greater ease and security men trample on the broken vessels of their pleasure. With sweeter joy of contrast women, neocrosus, propped up by children's skeletons, riding high upon the neck of the afflicted in luxury old shas and satraps, would have trembled at, blinks down on a world of ant-like toil, without the ant's rewards, secure in his weapons of steel. There is no wickedness or wretchedness in the long dolorous human past that is not outmatched by the wickedness and wretchedness of today. That, ever uglier against the new background of ethical pretense, shall not seem virtue and joy compared to the only a fool or a knave or a traitor to the truth can gainsay the doleful failure of humanity, its biological degeneracy into a type not capable, its moral degeneracy into a type not worthy of survival, its certainty to succumb, if to the evil in its body and heart it has not succumbed already, at the first advance signal from the sky. From such shrill bandying of total prejudice, assertion and bland counter-assertion of progress or decay integral, small help is to be had. Plants have weathered the dank warmth of the coal age and the hard cold of the ice age. While pole has swung to equator and equator to pole, they have flourished like the bay tree or arctic shrub, becoming deciduous or evergreen or deciduous, as the fashion vagaries of the climate demanded. Microbes take potluck, whether it freezes or boils over. Fishes are at home in the pilchard shallows of Cornwall or the 1-foot tarns of Cumberland, and in the abysmal depths of the unplumbed Pacific. They have passed from water to land and land to air, putting off fishhood for snakehood, and then birdhood, or remaining fish, bird or mammal, have suited their fins, wings or coats to the requirements of each changing age, that he ever evolved, that he survived the wild beast rivals of his long childhood, with only his brain to defend him and defy them till he ruled them all, that he surmounted every change of cold and heat, damp and drought, dearth, is. The wild creatures will be gone in another century. The tame ones are our slaves, and now we have made us new creatures, steel children of our brains, who will help the children of our bodies to new heights of resistance and new depths of subtlety, against the worst the stars and the years can do. Life is not the most, but one of the least adaptable of phenomena. The stones have survived. How many of the beasts? Where, for all his name, is Titanotherium robustum, or Diplodocus carnegie? Where now is pterosaur, flying reptile with massy head, bone-cased eyes and hopeful leer? Made cunning enough, one would have thought, for victory over time? Where is pythonomorph, spent double the size and horror of all silly season and all silly sailor tales? Eosaurus, giant ocean lizard, Iguanodon, giant ostrich reptile, Clepsydrops, Dimetrodon, Mylodon, Megatherium, Glyptodon, or in ascending Jurassic rhythm of towering horror, where Brontosaurus, Megalosaurus, Gigantosaurus, Atlantosaurus all went. They were herbivorous. Tyrannosaurus, the flesh-eater, devoured them. Where is he? Who should believe in that delirium world of bird dragons, elephant tigers, fish lizards, rhinoceros seals, armadillo monkeys, were it not for beholding their skeletons, their footprints, their dagger-like, dragon-like teeth that fastened into the writhing frames of our own fathers and mothers, and of those who might have been fathers and mothers of a higher race than ours. Pithecanthropus might have done better than Homo sapiens. But he died, as all but a tiny minority of species died, or are dying. Where is a banner upon the mountains? Where, to guide us through a world now pushed past the stars, where now is a star? Horrible infinite world, by the mirrorage stretched out through space and through time unto eternity. Where is a Jesus for eternity? Where is Emmanuel of the infinite? Even if it so be that man must go under, he will have found replacement by a tribe of gods. Whether the children of his body, made more than human by untold centuries of the work of his brain, or whether children of his brain alone, a triumph people, raised artificially, Paracelsus first tried his hand. Put so much sperma viri in an alembic. Stir, keep warm. After 40 days you will see a tiny creature moving about in the bottom of the still. Keep him there for 40 weeks at the temperature of a horse's belly. Feed him on human blood. At the end of the 40 weeks he will have developed into a small but perfect human being. Blundering nature, be evolved along new lines until in the fullness of time it reaches new heights, there at last to supplant its humbler creator and inherit the earth forever. Humanity, answers the soul of our sadness, far from fooling with cyanogen or semen, with biochemical blasphemies of creation or prolongation, far from seeking to make other life, will long ages before the astronomical limit have likelier made away with its own. Ages earlier the creatures of dust will, of sad choice, have returned to the earth as they were, and the spirit, if there be spirit, unto God who gave it. Between these frantic guessed antipodes of perdition and glory, we choose as we will or must, as mental bias suggests, as sense of humor or horror allows, as hope or fear of immortality decides. We may feel that, through the unnumbered years time vouchsafeth, one day the long curve will shoot up above the danger line forever. We may feel that one dip in the curve too deep, and life will forever be over. We may take courage from the infinite perils the race has survived, and see them as glad augury of perpetuity. We may take terror from the infinite variety and infinite littleness of the changes that could destroy it. One jot of carbon dioxide less, one touch of the cold 7 miles above or the heat 7 miles below. We may hope or fear this or that, work our belief to imagine that or this. But there is no evidence and no presumption of a kind any one of us, hopeful or fearful, would heed in any other matter, great or small, that either our race or any created or descendant race will in a future, nigh or far, be either much better able or much worse than at this present instant of time to affront whatever the earth and terrible heavens have in store. They decree, and we die. Earth. Themselves concentrate on quality rather than quantity. The sane sound Romans rather than the romantic Greeks. Yet of the Greeks Plato and Aristotle, the two greatest. The glorious Middle Ages, the saints and the fathers, the popes of Russia, Pope of Rome. Of the modern astronomers the modernist, the freest from fairy tale trammels. Sane sound Englishmen rather than frothy Flammarians. Flourish of nominal trumpets over, real arguments enter the field. On the one side, wherever conditions for the evolution of matter into life obtain, there surely is life. Such conditions obtain in many places besides this tiny planet Earth, waving the stars, and considering only her fellow members of the solar system, These are all more alike than unlike. Their differences in shape, size, temperature, are less striking than their resemblances. Among the planets, she alone is the right distance from the sun, has the due allotment of water, heat and light, the requisite mass, the suitable density of air. The moon is too cold and too small to have retained an atmosphere. The thing that could exist without atmosphere, whatever it was, not be life. That instantaneous green is an effect of light. What grass could spring up in a second or two? Mercury, and probably Venus, each turns one side towards the sun and the other forever away. One half is too cold and the other too hot. Mercury's in any case too tiny. Venus is covered with water, an abode of fishes, if of life at all. Rotation and rate of advance. Like to fulfill every one of the narrow and complicated geological and chemical and astronomical conditions, each one of which, present and compresent, is essential to existence. Earthmen are men, but the Neptunians no more real than Neptune's mermen, the men in the moon mere moonshine. Is there life on the comets, the sun, the burning stars, the dead ones? The miracle of special circumstances has in one special corner allowed the miracle of man. No unreasoning preference for universality of vitality, no vague mixing of spiritual and spatial conceptions can create it elsewhere. The religious temper in general, as distinct from Christian dogma, inclines the other way. God is everywhere, and therefore man. Buddhism, Swedenborgianism, pantheism, if they do not always posit, do not ever exclude material life on other material worlds. In the innermost heart also, the irrational corner still inviolate from facts and from faith, stand equally poised the two opposite persuasion. Persuasion, utterly, we are here on earth only. Persuasion, innerly, we are everywhere. More probably the lunar Lindbergh, if he got back to tell the tale, would report a dead world bestrewn with monstrous skeletons of an existence, neither vegetable nor animal, dead millions of years ago. A barren world with no prospects either vital or economic. No more gold for Old Glory, triumphantly planted on Mount Newton or the highest summit of the Leibniz Hills. The next expedition would be to Mars, always the most attractive of the neighbors. Those canals. Is not the very word a mistranslation? Life is a possible phenomenon on other worlds. One day we shall travel to other worlds. Could we live there? Other Earths are habitable. Are they habitable by man? By the time he needed new worlds to conquer, his brain, his forethought, the subtlety and subservience of science his slave, would have increased beyond present understanding. Man is a very local species, due to very local conditions on the earth, made up of certain proportions of C and N and H and O, and clearly unable to breed, if even to breathe, in a world where the proportions of these elements would be different, as, in every other known world they are. He would fall under the weight of his skeleton, choke through the lightness of his lungs. Transplantation is not probable and not possible. We shall die where we were born. The worlds to be colonized, being the habitable ones, may be inhabited already. Not desolate heritages for our seizing. On his Itinerarium Ecstaticum, the old Jesuit father found lovely angels of silver en venue, great angels of fire on the sun. Angels everywhere, and everywhere the friendliest reception. His experience may be repeated. Shamefaced, we shall find each fresh world we alight on to be a land of brothers and of beauty, an abode of perfection and holiness. Each of those stars is a religious house. I saw their altars smoke, their incense rise, and heard hosannas ring through every sphere. Or by Kant's theory that the planets furthest from the sun, having, by Kant's theory, had more time, have developed the highest organisms, We might expect a different reception according as we moved in towards the sun or out, under the latter. Alternative, either a more intelligent welcome or a bitterer resistance, according as further physical evolution is held to imply higher ethical evolution or not. The treatment the so-called higher races down here have meted out to the lower. The story, Earth's blackest story, of white man's wickedness to black, is no happy augury for the Martians' treatment of ourselves, a race more alien and kithless. Why should they treat us kindly? Why should the War of the Worlds be merciful? Why should it bring victory for us? The war may be fought here. We may be fated to be the colonized, conquered planet, wiped out within our own trenches by the Silenians or Silurians or Saturnians. By when things here were getting unfavorable, on Mars they would be worse. Migration hither is in plain fact the likelier. Next week the first man from Mars may be landing. Time would defeat us again if our hopes flew further afield. Saturn and Jupiter have no hope of a habitability phase. Uranus and Neptune have long been too cold. By the time we shall need a world for escape, there will be none to escape to. Can this go on forever? Or is there, end of all worlds, a universe end? What after? For terrible multitudes of years the stars have been pouring forth their light. The universe has been melting away. Since energy turns always into heat, and since heat passes always from a warmer body to a colder, there is always available less energy in the universe, whose temperature is always leveling up. In the end, no lucid atoms will be left. The transmission of energy will have ceased. Entropy, the final equalization of temperature, will be accomplished. The clock will have run down. All life, light, movement, vibration will be over, in soundless, motionless, eternal total night. The calorific death of the universe. The warmatod. Archipelagos of suns, some yellow like ours, some green, some red or indigo. Through darkness again. Out beyond galactical confines. Through icy mists of Magellanic nebulae, on into new stanchless clusters of furious worlds and desolate emptiness, through more millions of stars and more billions of miles, and most trillions of desolate emptiness, fresh terrible oceans of dividing darkness, onto new Milky Ways, lone island universes of prodigal immensity. But though it be of size unimaginable, microscopically, macroscopically, though every drop of water or grain of sand be itself an island universe, every molecule a constellation, every atom a solar system with electrons revolving round protons like. We are saved. Light can reconstitute matter, can build up stars to start all over again. It is last year's newest evangel. Entropy is only an average, a probability, and so must sometimes fail. As sometimes heat does pass from cold nebulae to warmer stars, as one day those apes will ride the tempest, and red outrun black, even till it break the heavenly bank. Here for an hour. And here it is not infinite, no more in time than in space. It could escape the warmth death only to die the time death. Either way, every way, the clock runs down. What started the clock? Who, how, and before, and after? Science is a shorthand based on these symbols, a game played with these counters, a creed recited with these words, an incantation formed with these names, a metrical ghost world filled with these gibbering wraiths, the arch-abstraction refined from these abstractions of abstractions. Its so-called facts are interpretative guesses. Its so-called laws are invented by our minds, not presented by the things themselves. Were our minds different, the apparent world would be different, and its apparent laws. Suppose we were 1 sense short, blind every one of us. then the universe we should apprehend would be a different universe, while in itself remaining, perhaps, the same universe. Suppose we had one sense more, then the cosmos would be different again, a place now unimagined and unimaginable, though still itself remaining, who knows, the same cosmos. Suppose thought were different, other than analytic, eclectic. Suppose it worked differently, with quite other symbols. Suppose it could think something other than thought. The world believed in has no being but in our brain that edifies it. It is an artificial construction made up of arbitrary signs, themselves made up by the narrowly selective machinery of our mind with the raw material supplied by our narrowly selective senses. The seen world, if one step less distant from it than the science world, is not the world, which is unknown. Can it ever be known? Is the universe knowable at all? The real scheme corresponding to the sham scheme in which the symbols figure. If the world were knowable, it would not be itself. If it were knowable for ourselves, we should not be ourselves. Acatalepsy makes equation with agnosticism, the object's incapability of being known with the subject's incapability of knowing. At most, our knowledge is of structure, not contents, of dream shape, not dream substance, of how imaginary things seem to fit together, not what real things are. How can we know? No juggling with the counters can help us to know. Can any other method of... Can religion, when not a bare system of life or government, a mere ethical program or aesthetic cult, but when reigning in her home province as sovereign remedy for and minister to the metaphysical ills and needs of man, she utters the magical name of God. The reality is unseizable, unapproachable, indefinable, in the most ultimate sense ineffable. The mystery, the misery is forever. Is the universe real? Is the universe rational? Evidence of some plan or scheme, of a certain order within certain ordered limits, of a measure of presiding harmony, is considerable. To minds which forget they are cage-bound, and give to the pattern of their bars the name of reason, it appears overwhelming. Yet gravitation may tonight, time run backwards, and the whole cosmos, like a nightmare sky, tear asunder or tumble together in hideous confusion and lunatic chaos. If no reason, has it reasons? That mankind, its climax, might be achieved, that the power of the devil should be shown forth, that the glory of the Lord shall be revealed. Some Elysian goal, unrevealed, unrevealing, unrevealable, or no reason, no purpose, ideas from the trap. Is the universe alive, conscious in supernal analogy to our kind of consciousness? Do earth and sun in dying have agony? Does consciousness accompany all material change? Rock decaying, comet frittering, moons forming, stars crashing? Does space suffer? Does number feel? Does the world that comprises them all know that it is alive? Feel that it is alive, look inwards and backwards and forwards at its holistic self? Is it fighting for its life as we all fight? Are we, as we fight for our lives, it fighting for its? If alive, will it die? It is not conscious nor unconscious. It is not suffering nor unsuffering. It is not alive nor dead. It is not there. Great nebula in Orion is seen as it was 1,000 centuries ago, not as it is now. As it is now, it will be seen, if any shall see, 1,000 centuries ahead. The brightest stars and biggest nebulae of all are not yet perceived, whose light has not reached us, or the dimmest stars may be the nearest, seen through space backwards. But no star, as no other thing, has ever been seen as it is. There is no is, only a timeless becoming. There is no time, only times and times. Time is a deduction, a derivation, a delusion, a trick on the trickster, a prisoner in prisoners' minds. Is the universe infinite? Finite or infinite? Both are inconceivable. Brains nor hearts can imagine neither edge nor rim, end nor beginning. Nor can imagine the world without margin or limit, without beginning or end. Both are totally, equally, irrevocably inconceivable. Either each one of the possible combinations of lines or atoms or movements will one day recur, and again recur, and forever recur. The whole present configuration of the whole in every particular and detail reappear, disappear, again reappear, and so on through the endless nightmare ahead as it has appeared, disappeared, reappeared in the beginningless nightmare behind. This was the thought that enabled Socrates to abide Xanthipp's tongue with patience, and without fear to face the hemlock. Or else, in the direction in which time is going, its one open end, the future, the universe, is creating itself. It is the supernatural stalemate, the wormitude of souls. Is the universe old? If thus finite, is it nearing its end? Of all the matter that must once have filled it, the greater part has spent itself in radiation, and only a little part remains. Calculate the light there was in the beginning, and the light that since has shone forth. 23 parts of it have been beamed away, is the surmise, and a 24th part of it is still to spend. 23/24 of time is over. It is 11 at universe night. The world's lamps are flickering, and no oil and no light are to buy. Behold, the bridegroom cometh. Is the universe terrible? No sense capping ye with nay and nay with ye. Each soul must answer for itself. Some there are who see glory not as the foil, the predestined victim, the glittering shadow of evil, but as the soul and substance prevailing. Sometimes no sound escapes me. I have taught my will to stifle it. I may be in company, in the midst of friendly or frivolous talk. Uttered or unuttered, the moan in my heart continues to madness place. Then stops, the vision vanishes, blood rushes back through my veins. Then a moment almost of pleasure, warm joy of deliverance. Was there ever, a universe? It is a dream. A dream of a dream, dream within dream forever, with no reality ever behind. Even the dream is an illusion. An illusion that it is a dream. An illusion that it is not a dream. An illusion that the dream, dream or not, is being dreamt, dream within dream forever. It is not the dream but the dreamer, who himself forever is dreamt. The joy and the truth is zero, non-being, nihility. There is no universe.